get started, we have a roll call.
Edwin Eichmann.
Gary Shackleton.
Diane Dealco.
Ed Wells.
Herb John.
All right, we have a quorum. Should we have a moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any motions on the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Okay, I'll get a second. All in favor of approving the agenda format?
Aye.
Okay. Any comments or motions on the agenda, minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any reports? Is this where we can talk about the work session reports that we did?
No, this is like just this report that I get from the
Okay.
zoning administrator approval.
Zach, do you have any reports?
Just what I was provided, I don't have anything extra to say.
Public
Do we
comments?
need to take any action on it?
Just the approval of the report, just like the minutes and then
Here?
to
Okay. Any comments on the report? Okay.
Well, I move we approve the staff report as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Second. I didn't know we had to do that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Public comment? Do we have any public comments?
We did not.
We do not have any public
Nor
comments.
did I have any submitted.
And we have no unfinished business that I'm aware of at this point. Okay, the first item on the new business is an application for certificate of appropriateness to paint the existing unpainted brick exterior of a duplex at 206, 208 Madison Avenue. The applicant. Okay, you want to come up, introduce yourself, and tell us about your application?
Well, basically, what I wrote,
I'm sorry, your name?
Graham Bisdale,
Okay.
and it's really, as you know, as I stated in the, I guess, the letter of intent, yeah. And although I did, there's one thing that somebody had pointed out to me, that actually contacted, on going before the review board, page 16. Minor actions such as painting and routine maintenance require no permit, no review. So,
I think you'll find that refers to painting of existing painted surface, like siding, trim, something like that.
well, okay, it doesn't say that here. First of all, I mean, I'm actually, have always been against painting brick, to be quite honest. I never understand why people do it. But, you know, in a situation where it seems to be the only way of taking care of where we've got breakdown masonry, where it's and you have water leaking in, you get water damage. I'm very concerned now about water coming in and frost. You know, you can see where. I don't know. Did you actually go to the building?
Yes,
You went, yeah. So,
I did.
so I don't need to sort of describe the condition of it. Oh, sorry, say the condition. And so there was actually some pointing down, but it's just not holding it. And it just seemed to be the only option. And certainly it's a cost-effective option. There may be other things you can do, but I think it would be cost prohibitive. And the other thing is, I think it does actually improve the appearance, and I know that's really not your I don't know whether that makes a difference or not, but it certainly does when we're seeing it. It looks a lot better. And it's a vacation rentals. You know, the inside is, we spend a lot of money on the inside, furnishings and so on, but the outside looks pretty unappealing. And I just thought we'd be able to do some other maintenance to the exterior of the brick, but it just didn't seem to make sense. And so we started painting, but we got stuff all. I think we can probably see already, there are pictures of the back where it's already painted. I do have, I didn't include on anybody who wants to see it. I do have pictures of what it looked like previously. And I think even the beam there, unfortunately, I don't have enough to get everything. But
was the back significantly different from the sides and the
no,
other
I mean the side, it's, you know, if you look around the sides, I mean some places it's great, other places it's not good, and it's definitely a concern. And I've even got some pictures here, but if you've been there, I don't think you need to see it where you can see the cracks and so on. And where we painted, we haven't actually done, the next thing was to go over and fill in, you know, the cracks and make the fairs there, and then we do make sure that it's top of that. And we have had some in water coming in as well, and we've done some damage inside. We've had to repair. We seem to have solved that problem at the moment, but I don't know for how long. And it sort of depends which way the rain comes. What happens.
So on the back, are you saying you've applied a single coat of paint?
Yes.
Did you do, though, any masonry preparation work prior to applying that first paint coat, such as top pointing or other repairs, masonry repairs?
No, I mean, taking off obviously loose masonry and so on, but other than that, no, it's painted, and then, this is what I'm told, the way it's to be done, and then after that, we go and see it, because by doing that, it helps to see it, to stain, and then paint over it again.
What's the product that you use?
It's, I think it's called Duramax, I think it's called.
That's the, is it a Sherwin-Williams or a Benmore product, or is it specifically made for masonry? Is it latex, oil?
No, it's latex, and it's for brick. And it's called Duramax, but where it actually came from, sorry, I can't. I'm not going to do it. So.
Anybody else? Comments? Questions?
Well, I'm just looking at what Zach approved. I mean, is that, do you want to continue painting the rest of the building?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know Zach finished. I don't know, I don't want to get Zach in trouble, but I asked him if he admitted he put it better after it was painted. But that's not his job, I don't like that.
Well, yeah, well, his recommendation was
Yeah.
to leave the rear
No.
and remove the front painting.
But that's not going to solve it.
Yeah.
And on the sides as well. Especially one side is worse than the other, and I think the weather situation, which would be, I guess, the west side.
What's the depth of the water decay overall? Half inch?
Sorry, can't come in? It varies. I mean, some of it looks pretty good and some of it looks pretty bad. Yeah. And also, there are some places where, seeing this because water's got in and the bricks are actually moving out a little bit.
Work this
One
well.
of the other places, yeah. So presumably that's the water's got down there and it's frozen and pushed the brick out. And I really don't want any more of that to happen because it's...
Are you pointing the brick up before you paint, or you just want to paint?
No, in other words, the equivalent that there's some sealer or sealant going in after the first paint, instead of pointing.
Have you read the section on masonry in the guidelines?
A few weeks ago, I did read the whole, but I can't remember.
Well, first of all,
I mean, to repoint the whole building would be absolutely, I mean, I couldn't do it. It's quite simple, I just couldn't do it.
well, in actuality, painting masonry, especially historic masonry, is like one of the worst things you can do for it. Early bricks are porous. That's just the way they're made. And if you paint them with, especially a latex product like this product, what you do is you seal them up. They can't breathe. And then any moisture that gets in there through the ground, which they're spongy in terms of the way the water moves, it'll suck it up from the ground. Then it can't get out, and then it creates a real problem for you. So that's why the National Park Service and their guidelines are very specific about not painting historic masonry.
I
So,
mean, there are a lot of paint buildings in town.
oh, I don't deny that, but, you know, that's why in the guidelines it says don't paint masonry.
Oh, yeah.
I think we have to consider two things here. One, that this is classified as a contributing property in the district because of its age. That puts it in a somewhat different classification as far as the National Park Service guidelines and other federal and state requirements are concerned. Which means sometimes there's really less flexibility in the changes that can occur on that type of historic structure. Combined with, as Gary just indicated, the guideline pretty clearly does not allow the painting of brickwork. So, as a board, part of our obligation here is to ensure compliance with the guidelines, because that, of course, is the controlling document that we all have to work from, which sometimes creates a dilemma, but I don't know that as a board we have a whole lot of choice in the decision that we can make in this particular instance.
Any other comments, questions?
The problem is, like you said, the bricks that were made today are fired under high temperature and they're not porous. Bricks that were not fired in a kiln that they are today are just like sponges.
But surely then, by sealing it, it would stop it being porous. I mean, it's obviously,
Well,
the water's coming in.
Here's what's going on. It's easy, the best way to think of it is like a sponge sitting in water, because those bricks are sitting in the ground, right? So in actuality, if you dug under the bricks in that building, I bet you'll find there's no footing. That's very typical. So they're sitting yay deep in the ground. So they're sitting in the water. Well, then it's even more compounded, because now you have 4 or 5 feet of masonry in the ground. So that's a sponge that's sitting in the ground, and it's sucking up water all the time. And if you put a coating on the outside of it, that moisture has only one way to get out, and that's to come in your house. The best thing for you to do is to get a hold of somebody who does historic masonry work, get them to advise you about the best course of action, because you'll save money. You may spend a little bit more money now, but you'll save money in the long run, because somebody who doesn't know what they're doing will put Portland cement in when they're pointing, and that will also compound your problem. You want to use lime-based mortar, which also bleeds.
That law, I'm not doing that part, I didn't know.
So, I think that would be my recommended sort of thing for you to do, is get a hold of somebody who's familiar with historic masonry, not just, a person who lays a good quality brick wall and a good quality brick building may not have experience with a historic building, and that makes a big difference in what you do.
Okay. I understand. I mean, to me, 1932 is not historic, but anyway, that's...
From the brick standpoint, it's very much so, because it's made up of pores.
No, I'm just sort of...
Yeah.
That's partly where I come from.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying. Do we have any motions?
Didn't really discuss leaving the paint on the back.
let's have any discussion that you want.
Well, obviously, I don't think we should have to remove it, I mean, it's done.
Well, the back of the building, of course, is not
It's
really
not
visible
purview
from
anyway.
the public streets, so to some extent, we don't really have a great deal of jurisdiction over.
That
side.
How about the sides?
Well, the sides are, but so far, fortunately, all that's actually been fully painted is just the back wall.
Yeah.
And 3 sides that aren't visible from the street, except for the one small area of the northeast corner, has not been painted. So,
But it doesn't say, do not paint brick, except for the brick you can't see, then that's okay. It's a do not paint brick.
Yeah, but our purview is,
No, it's not always our purview.
well,
from
I
what
think
you
it
can see
is,
from the
because
street.
we're only supposed to deal with the front exterior.
Okay, so what if he takes his house, cuts it out, and throws it away, and leaves the front in good only? Because that's our only purview, is the front of the house.
No, I don't give you an analogy.
Yeah. Well, you said the only thing that we have purview over is the front of the house, what we see from the street. So we can take a house that is historic, we can cut it down the front, behind the front wall, get rid of all this, and build a whole nother house behind it, and we're okay.
No, that's absurd.
It is absurd, but that's exactly what we're saying now, are we not?
Yeah, but, I mean, I hear both sides of the coin here. I mean, I think from a visual standpoint, visual changes, we do not have purview where it's not visible. So if
Yeah,
you
that's what
wanted
I
to
was
change
saying.
the visible appearance of the building, preservation of the building, preservation of historic fabric, preservation of historic material, I think we do have a responsibility from the guidelines to live up to. So, to me, the question here is there more damage going to be done by removing the paint from the back of the building or leaving it in place?
It'll do more damage.
Well, I think you may be right, but should we ask him to get someone who can write a report to us on that?
Well, I just did Chris Patton's house on, and pressure washed it. And I used a larger tip and a larger tip, and it was still cutting the mortar out.
Well, it says right in here, don't pressure wash.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way to do it is they make specific strippers that work well for that. It's a very time-consuming process.
Yeah.
And it is, after that, there has to be work done afterwards. So that's the question.
Low pressure.
I used low pressure, well,
I think we're kind of in the same place we are with everything. We can't seem to make a decision as to what is our responsibility. And if you are thinking that him continuing to paint the rest of the house is a problem, then why is it okay that the back is painted? Isn't that a problem? Won't that create a problem inside the house? Won't that make the house less sturdy, be a problem in the future?
I think it certainly contributes to it, but it's, again, for me, it's a balance of, is there enough potential damage going to happen to the building over its life to warrant taking it off, and the damage that's going to occur in the process of taking it off?
If he had painted the entire house, how would you feel?
I feel differently about it because then you have completely sealed the box up.
So we are basing this not just on it would cost him money and be a lot of work. We're basing this on the fact that we think the house would be okay if we don't take the paint off the back.
That's my opinion.
yeah, I agree with that.
Okay?
I
Yeah,
think it'll do more
I
damage.
feel that it's less, it's not as bad as the whole thing was done, that's for sure. It's only 25% of the house roughly.
as we discussed, I think the basis for retaining the paint on the back is the softness of the brick is likely going to
Okay.
And so it's one of those, you weigh the pros and cons and try to provide what seems to be a reasonable
Okay,
option for that.
I'll agree with
I
you
can see what
then.
you're saying, Diane, but,
But now what do we do about the corner of the front that he painted? How does he remove that paint?
I think it has to come off. It's a small portion, it's manageable, it may create some problem, but it's not gonna hold skin level with that.
Okay,
That's, yeah.
It also happens to be up at the top floor, it's not down to
Right.
the ground, so.
Which is gonna see less water anyway.
okay, okay.
Any more discussion?
Nope.
Do we have a motion of any kind?
I move that we, I'll say first, I'm going to follow the general staff report format, and that is, I move that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for retaining the painted finish on the south back wall of the building, combined with removing the small area of painted brick on the north wall of the building, and I'm not quite sure how to word this, and not approving the painting of any additional painting on the sides and the front. It's not worded very well.
You already said that by just saying you accept the back.
You see, take the front off. What you said. So your motion is to approve keeping the south wall painted or the rear of the building, removing the painted surfaces on the front facade of the building, and no further paint action on any portion of the building.
I second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor? For
Aye.
discussion? Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry, discussion.
Jump to vote. Okay, no discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Your motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. 206. Okay, application for certificate of appropriateness to construct a two-story, single-family detached residential dwelling and a two-story accessory structure at 333 Madison Avenue.
Hi,
Could you introduce yourself?
Edmund Sabo. Property owner, 333 Madison.
Okay.
And I'm Bill Valley, the contractor.
You want to give us a brief overview of what you have in mind there?
Sure. So the proposed project is for Ed and Amy Sabo, located at 333 Madison Avenue, which at one point was a single lot. Now they vacated a property line to make it a double lot where the old cleaners were many years ago. If you're familiar with the area. So now it's a double lot, 80 by 140. It is a corner lot on the corner of Madison and Peach. The frontage of the house will be on Madison Avenue. It is a 3-bedroom house on the first floor, 1,980 square feet on the first floor. The second floor is unfinished, of 1,140 unfinished square feet. It does have a 150 square foot front porch, which covers 80% of the front facade. There is a side porch facing due west, which would be the left elevation. It's 330 square feet screened in. And then in the rear yard, there is a proposed detached 2-car garage, which the first floor is 20 by 24. It has two garage doors facing the rear of the proposed home. There is those doors are 9 foot wide, 8 foot tall, they're raised panel doors. And it has a proposed second finished floor with stairs to grade off of the west side.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Well, I'll begin with the foundation of the house.
Yep.
What do you plan for the floor framing?
The floor framing itself,
Floor framing.
2 by 10 floor doors, 16-inch on centers.
Okay. The front elevation shows a dimension of 1 foot 6 inches from finished grade to finished floor. Is that correct?
That's about 24 inches before finished established grade.
Well, the way the drawing was presented, and that applies to all of the drawings, the elevation drawings for the house.
Right.
You know, there's a horizontal line that you would normally assume on the exterior represents a finished grade.
Right.
And, you know, it then shows a vertical dimension of 1 foot 6 inches from that line to what's identified as the finished floor, because then it shows the finished ceiling above it. So my question is, if in reality, the exterior finished grade is 1 foot 6 inches below the finished floor inside the house, you've indicated that you're planning on 4 courses of block for the foundation.
Yes, sir.
But if you then drop down from the finished floor to the underside of the framing, it appears from these drawings that the bottom of the floor frame is maybe only 6 inches above the crawl space grade, if the crawl space grade matches the exterior grade. That's what I'm trying to sort out here.
Okay, so there needs to be some clarification there that the exterior drawing showing 1 foot 6 is going to be a typical. So it could be, you know, you're going to have some fall away from the foundation per code. You're going to have some fall away from the foundation in order not to have footer erosion. So that is typical. So we're going to have 4 courses of block. There is going to be a 2 by 10 floor joist on top of that. So, I mean, adding the math, you know, all together there, you're going to be somewhere right around 36 inches from your footer to the finished floor. So, you know, typically you're just going to have some typical elevation there to have some guesstimation of element.
I guess what I'm trying to clarify here is what will the actual clear height of the crawl space be from the bottom of the framing to the grade?
Roughly about 24 inches.
It will be 24 inches.
Yes.
So that's completely different, it appears, than what the drawings are representing here. Unless the grade and the crawl space is below the finished grade on the exterior.
No, they have to match. I mean, you have to have, there could be a deviation of 6 inches.
That's what I've said. My basic point here is that the drawings that have been submitted appear to show what is a less visually exposed height of foundation wall below the siding on the house, simply because of the way it's drawn and what the dimensions are. And you indicate in your information that, of course, as is typical in crawl spaces, that there'll be vents.
Mm-hmm.
There are no vents shown as well, so part of my point with this process is the information, that portion of the information in drawing form, that doesn't seem to be accurately presented, because if in fact the floor is further above the finished grade on the outside, you're going to have more steps going up to the porches, to the front porch, and other visual differences. Plus, you will be able to see the vents in the foundation wall around the perimeter too. So, does anybody, you all have any other?
Well, my only concern with that is that, you know, you said you're going to have a 4 block tall foundation. So that's 4 block off of your footing.
Yeah, you're typically going to grade, if you have a perfectly level lot, which I haven't found one in this time yet, if you have a perfectly level lot, then you're going to grade up 1 block or a little more than 1 block to get the fall that you need to meet code.
But if you're going to have a 4 block foundation, the maximum you can be off of grade would be 32 inches plus the size of your joist, right?
That's right, the depth of the joint. Yeah.
So,
That would be from top of the footing.
your concern was if it was gonna be too low,
Yeah, I was.
or that the drawings didn't accurately reflect.
Well, the combination of either an extremely shallow floor space that could be, a long-term issue for the owner, or that the drawings are not accurately or really representing what the exterior appearance of the foundation portion of the house will
It's
show.
really hard to take the topo of the lot and have the architect or engineer take those two things and put them together, especially when you have two different entities. A surveyor doesn't usually draw a house, and a engineer doesn't typically survey a lot.
Well, I've been a registered architect for 50 years. That's not, as far as I'm concerned, necessarily the case.
So your concern is that the
You
height,
prepare drawings that accurately reflect both the visual and the construction requirements for a project. Otherwise, a group like this really can't accurately, base decisions on what is provided in the way of information.
So your footer is gonna be 24 inches and what, 12 inches thick?
24 inches wide, 12 inches thick.
All right, so
And how far below grade at the bottom of the footing may be?
Code here is your frost line 0. So your top of footers can be level with top ground.
You can't
that's
see
not
the
what I
level
want
of
my
the
house.
house.
So there again, what I'm saying is that if the lot were perfectly level, then your first block would be at the edge of grade, but that's typical. So you're guessing typically.
I disagree with that 12 inches.
Well, let me ask a question. So, is your concern, Ed, predominantly about the accuracy of the drawings reflecting what they really are?
Right.
Because whether the footing meets code or not.
Well, that would, at that depth, it would be fine. I mean, you're going up 4 block and it's.
So, in his description, he says 4 blocks, which would be a maximum height of 32 inches off the ground, plus your hand, so call it 42 inches, worst case scenario. That doesn't bother us in terms of the height, it could be that high, it wouldn't bother us.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Since I'm the only non-builder here, when you say 32 inches, it would be from the ground up, and that would be the part without siding on it.
That would be, if he built right on top of the ground, that would be the absolute maximum it could be, because he's only going to have 4 blocks. 4 blocks is 32 inches. 4 eighths is 32. So, to me, I hear what Ed is saying, that we want to be sure that the drawing reflects accurately what's going to be built. But let's get past the foundation, the footing issue, because whether the footing meets code or not really doesn't have anything to do with it.
But that is not the problem I have, really. I'm looking at this, and this to me is very low to the ground compared to any of the other ones that have been built.
Well, that's what Ed's saying.
Well, and I'm talking about the way it looks. I'm not talking about whether it's built to code or not. I'm just talking about if this is built and I go out with this drawing and I hold it up to the house, is this what I'm gonna see? Or I'm gonna see the house higher?
I
Or
would
gonna
say
see
it's
4
gotta be-
steps,
it's gonna
2
be higher.
steps, 6 steps?
It's gotta be higher.
So in that case, we really need to talk about the foundation, parging, brick, what is it made of, what's the porch foundation made of? These are really important things.
One other thought related to the exterior appearance of the foundation wall is exposed between grade and the underside and the bottom of the siding. There's an indication that, of course, the foundation will be masonry block, but there is no indication of any parging or other finishing
It will be
material.
pars. It will be pars with Portland cement.
It will be, okay.
My interpretation of that is a standard thing here. You cannot have visible more.
Yes,
more
yes.
than once.
There doesn't seem to be any indication of that in the
Sorry about that.
information, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Are you planning a 2-coat process?
Actually, they use 3 coats. They do 1 scratch coat and 2 finish coats.
Okay.
Good.
On the foundation below the porch railing, what's that made of?
Foundation below the porch railing on the house. Or
Yeah.
on the house is
porch.
pars.
The porch is the front porch. You've got the railing and then there's just a big white
lattice.
lattice.
So you'll have piers
Yes, sir.
and the lattice in between?
Yes, sir.
Does that answer your question?
The answer is
Did it-
I have,
No, I'm just being sure. that-
No, I know. you know, my biggest problem with this house is it seems to be headed on the left side, and on the right side where it's going to be seen from the street, there's nothing, there's no detail, it's just a big block. And I was wondering why, number one, you pushed the house so far on the side, and number two, you didn't do things like put your dormer window on that side, or anything that would make the other side look reasonable. I mean, I'm looking at what the neighbor's done for you, and it's pretty nice across the street. And you've got lots of nice windows to look at, and peaks, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, it does happen that this is on a prominent corner.
it is a
lot.
very prominent
So I
corner.
think we have to give consideration to the Jefferson Street aspect as well as the Madison.
Well, it would be
Avenue side.
peach.
And,
Yeah, it's Madison.
oh, Peach,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, excuse me, yes.
And
And, Diane, I'm thinking in a somewhat similar direction that you are as far as the Peach Street side, being rather nondescript, especially relative to that example that's directly across the street from it, is the Peach Street side of that example. Have you all given any consideration to any sort of different delineation or any other elements on that east side of the house?
Originally, the right gable end wall faced Peach Street. This house was redesigned per the pre-meeting request to have less frontage on Madison Avenue, which we did. So now we're getting a different, and we spent a lot of time and effort to redesign this house per the pre-meeting to have less frontage on Madison. And now we have side frontage on Peach, which is the consequence to each side when you asked us to do what was done.
I'm
You're
not
now
sure,
dealing with that consequence.
are you sure you understand? Because I'm not, I don't have a problem with the length of this house.
Well,
I
in the
just would like
pre-meeting, in the pre-meeting they did, the frontage, there was 60-foot of frontage on Madison.
Yes.
Now there's 32-foot
Right.
of frontage on Madison.
Right?
In order to get that same size house now, by turning the left gable end wall facing Madison, now instead of having that right gable end wall facing Peach, now it's gonna face the rear. And you're gonna have that big roof that's now facing Peach.
I don't think anybody's concerned about the roof, I think as much, I think the concern is about the, sort of the wall, window relationship, and that, to me, refers back again to the guidelines that says respect the ratio of walls to openings, windows and doors, evident on adjacent historic facades. Generally, historic buildings have more wall area than window area. Place windows and doors on facades of new buildings in a rhythm or pattern that relates to the way that openings are placed on historic buildings. I think that's where everybody come out.
Well, this design is a lot better than the design that I met with the pre-application. The frontage on Madison was 60 feet, like we said, and they redesigned it. I think this new proposal is much nicer design than what was proposed before.
Yeah, have you seen that ad on TV? Better? Or better is not good? Oh, good is not better, but anyway, regardless.
You know, I don't really have any concern with this current proposal relative to the orientation or the massing or such. I think my main interest is in determining whether or not anything further could be done with the east side of the house, because it has total exposure on Peach Street to delineate, if you will, or vary somewhat way the overall, facade and or roof form appearance is there.
You know, the left elevation is a lot more interesting than the right, and the left is,
Well, that's course.
But that's the portion of our house that overlooks our yard.
Yeah.
And it faces west for the setting
I
sun.
understand,
And we
but
don't necessarily wanna give up, I mean, the reason why we have that house so nice and close to the beach is so that we can take advantage of that western look.
I'm not suggesting you flip them, but I'm saying it's a lot better looking, and couldn't you take some of these elements and add them to the other side?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I mean, you're talking about the gable and the porch, so we're gonna put the porch on Peach Street?
No, we're not talking about that at all.
I'm sorry, the screen door on the side.
No, not at all. Just for example, you do have a dormer element on the west side
Right.
of the roof. Have you given any consideration to the possibility of something like, one or more dormer elements on the roof on the east side?
This
As
is-
a way to three-dimensionally.
Right, we only want one dormer, and we want it on the western side so that we get the setting sun.
Customer's not even finishing the second floor of this portion of the build, and the main reason for the design of the house is to have a higher roof pitch, to have some sort of pleasure to the historic district, rather than having a shallow roof pitch, a higher roof pitch, and they do have on that 60-foot run on the Peach Street side, there is 16 feet of windows. There are 2 bedrooms that face the Peach Street side. One bedroom has a double window in it. There's no room left in that bedroom for any improvement for windows. Bedroom 2 up in the front, you could add a single window there if you wanted to. And then of course the living room, their plans in between the window spacing in the living room was that they were going to put their TV feature between those 2 windows. So they were trying to, you need to have some wall space somewhere to put those type of features, otherwise you just no wall space left. So for as far as improvement, I from a builder standpoint, I only see one window could make the addition to that left elevation, to that right elevation. And it would have to be a single. I mean, I know you guys prefer single window.
This is the house next door. This is essentially what their side would look like without that. And that's the side that's gonna face Peach. Now, is there any decorative detail or anything that could make the house more interesting on that side? Could you put wider trim around the windows or?
Certainly, and a matter of fact, it's not portrayed on this elevation because it was decided after the fact, and I'm sure the board allowed for that, but it was decided after the fact that the same trim that is on the front windows will be on the Peach Street side windows.
That was another of my questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
5-inch trim on windows.
Okay.
Which,
So if you go to the front elevation.
is that like the 2-story house on Tazewell?
Yes, yep.
That'll be how wide it is?
That would be high volume, that's a 5, yeah.
And that's gonna be all the way around the house?
Matter of fact, this customer chose the same color siding as the Tazewell house.
I was gonna say, it better not be the same. All right, let me show the ties.
Exterior, like not part of the building.
It's all those possible, it's just not something that's in our.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that could be part of the discussion, it's gonna make it more interesting.
See,
than you
guys are
guys.
this too, this is
Well,
on Washington.
I have a couple of other comments on those 2 facades. The window, the tiny window that is on the, if I read this correctly, the front of the left elevation.
Yes.
Yeah, this window right here.
Georgia Mason Avenue.
Yeah, I mean, that is way outside, to me, is way outside of the guidelines for proportionality, and if you had that on the back gable of the house, I think it wouldn't be an issue for us, but, I mean, that's, to me, is just really speaks of a modern building. I'm assuming you have a bathroom or something there.
Yeah, sure, the bed's gonna go, where the bed will go against the wall.
Yeah, that's the bedroom, it's the bed walls.
But
This one right here.
I mean,
But yeah.
I think you gotta come up with a better window there.
Yeah, what,
Yeah.
what is the general precedent in the
Are you
district?
talking about the transom?
Yeah, the little tiny
The
slit.
the very horizontal
Transom.
window on the left elevation,
It's a transom.
But there's no window under
yeah.
It's a fixed transom, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
mean,
except the
I
transom,
thought you were talking about the
bathroom window?
the 24210 window that was in the
it.
back.
No, this regular.
There, the transom.
Yeah.
that narrow window on the west side.
So, I mean, I think we gotta do something about that.
Well, let me just, in that direction, the prevalent window proportions in the district are either square, so the width and height is the same, or vertical, so the height is greater than the width. And whenever there are any generally horizontal window compositions, it's made up of perhaps a row of square windows or another detail relative to what Barry was just referring to. So this does have to create a very good window for the district.
So for me, that window is problematic in terms of the design. Also, on the front facade.
Wait for a second, while we're right there,
Yeah.
on that left elevation, the west side, there's another window to the north of that one we were just talking about. That is a 4/1 indication. And to me, it would make more sense for that window to be the same as the 2/1 window that's on the rear elevation drawing, because then it would match all of the light patterns of.
Yeah, that's a misprint. Actually, I made that in the email when I sent to him that it was supposed to be 201.
Okay, thank you.
Just for sort of future, what we have to go on is the drawing. And so if we approve the drawing, you know, you're at liberty to build it as it's drawn. So
Right.
we want to see a drawing that accurately reflects that. Now, that can be an amended drawing, but when Zach comes back, we'll make sure that we have, you know, what he wants to do in terms of how it's done. Generally, we want to see the drawing that reflects 100%.
Understand.
And the screen porch, is the screen inside or outside of the railing?
Proposed, the screen is proposed on the outside. Post shown, but outside.
Inside posts.
Yeah, the screen system that I use is totally different. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I'm the only guy in here that uses it. It's a screening system. It is no post and all screen.
So the question, I think, is that if this is the post, is the screen here and the house here? Or is the screen out here and the house is here?
So if this is the post and this is the street, the screen goes here.
Interrupting the post.
In between the posts.
In between.
You see the front of the post. So when you see it from the street, you see the post.
But if you're looking from the street, are you seeing the railings or the railings inside the screen?
Is the railing on the inside or outside the screen?
The railing is proposed on the inside of the screen. A customer may decide differently if you guys want to see it differently,
The
but
guidelines call for the screen to be on the inside.
on anything that you can see from the front, right?
Well,
Each
the
end.
primary porch elements being
Yeah.
the post and the railings. Yeah.
I understand what you guys are gunning for, because the Granger job that came before you guys, it was approved only due to the screen being on the inside. We can do it that way, there's no problem to do it that way. I prefer for it to be the opposite, because when you have kids and dogs and stuff like that,
I mean, we're just, that's what.
and I understand, so, and the screen is 92% opaque, so you can see through it just fine.
Michael, one more comment on the placement of the windows, Ed, and then I'll pass to you. I'm gonna determine to call you Ed.
You can call me Ed. I'm sitting instead.
You missed that conversation before you came in. That's well. So, along with the small narrow window, the other sort of thing that I think you and I had this conversation earlier about the double windows on the front gable. And again, I might be wrong, but I'm not sure we have a lot of windows in town on historic examples that have those double windows. I think historically you'll find they're single window rather than a pair together. Anybody seen that, comment on that?
I can't.
Well, I hesitate to say this, but this is a new house, so it should be in character with, but does not have to be exactly like. I don't have a problem with the double windows, but I do have a problem with the fact that the house is so sparse of detail. And really, except for the porch sticking out of the side, it's a trailer. It has no other ins and outs to it. To me, I mean, this is another house that Bill built, and this is a spectacular house. And people don't know that this house is modular. I mean, I think a modular home is fabulous.
But
I
today-
highly recommend it.
In today's board, that house wouldn't be approved because it has a shed roof. And shed roofs are not encouraged. So in order to get character, you have to do it, it's gotta be a little give and take on that.
But you know, a shed roof, is that what you're talking over the porch?
No, the shed, the
What's a shed?
two shed dormer
Oh,
on each side.
yeah, that's the Dutch thing,
No, the Dutch is a little different.
right? Okay, well, we've approved houses with this,
No,
but
we didn't put that one.
So are you more concerned about the roof, or are you more concerned about inside the straight wall?
well, I'm really concerned about the straight wall on Peach, just because I think that
So an
Peach is a huge.
An
is a
additional
real-
window up towards the front, maybe,
No,
and the 5-inch trim, I mean,
The 5-inch trim would be helpful.
okay?
All right, can you think of any other kind of trim that could be done that,
I'm not a wide baseboard. Would that help things?
on the bottom of the window?
No, on the bottom of the foundation.
How big are the sills?
Maybe a freeze board up top.
Okay. How thick are the sills?
It's another subject that I have on my list.
Are you making notes? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, how far do you want to go with, I mean, we can make suggestions or we can ask them to, we can defer and ask them to come back with a better design. I mean, I don't know how much we can specifically say, add this, add that, add this, or do that.
I agree.
Really?
The 5-inch window
Then
trim.
why are we here? Why do I say
We
this
can't,
every time?
we can't determine the design.
We don't, all right, let's not determine the design, but what's wrong with some detail?
There's nothing, I don't think there's anything, what I'm saying is that, it's not really our position to design the building. It's our position to approve. We can offer some suggestions, which I think you've made several, good suggestions in my mind. I think Ed's made a couple of good suggestions in my mind. But I don't think we're not gonna get to the point of where we can say, we offer a conditional approval if you add this, add that, change this, do that, add these elements of design. Because, number one, you're talking about a lot of changes. And I think that's gonna have to come in the form of a drawing.
So if we, as a board, says, we think the Peach Street side really doesn't look great, it's on an important street, would you be willing to put more trim, not just the 5 inches, but maybe a lower bottom or top on it, to make it more appealing? We're not allowed to say that, or are
I
we?
think we can offer that as a suggestion, and they can return with that. But I don't think you're gonna have such a list of conditions that offering a conditional approval is gonna be difficult to do.
What are the conditions so far?
Well, I think we have some conditions on the windows,
Okay,
from my standpoint.
which is,
Placement of the windows, size of the windows, combination of two windows together.
in that case, I would say it would be deferred. That's a lot of changes.
Well, I mean, that's just windows, we haven't got
Yeah.
trim around the windows.
Yeah,
Siding,
all right, in which case I think we need to explain to them exactly what it is we're looking for when they come back. So that when they come back, they get it, as opposed to,
I agree, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, rather than spending a lot of time looking at specific design elements, we want you to add this, we want you to add that, give some basic guidelines that we'd like to see some changes that add details, design details to break up the length of the wall. Ed can probably sort of enumerate that better than I can, and give them the opportunity to come up with those design elements that they want, rather than us sort of force feeding them with design elements that we want. I don't know, that's just,
I think they would come back with a lot of changes, they changed the whole design. I think it looked a lot better than the original, to tell you the truth. There are some things that I'm not completely happy with, but I don't know if it's our thing to completely redesign some of these elements.
if it's not our place, why are we doing anything at all? Looks great, go.
Well, I think there's there is a limit
Is it your
to,
opinion or what?
if there's a limit to how much design we can apply. I think what's in the guidelines for the design of structures, that's what we need to refer to. So if there's a spot in the design that says, and I'm being overly sort of facetious here, that says in a 60-foot wall you should have some elements like this, then that's a real easy thing to refer to. I think we can't give out an ambiguous idea of we want more,
Detail.
I'm not trying to be, we need to refer to the
Some of the
guidelines.
things are, that I object to is this window.
Yeah.
That doesn't carry into any antiquity of the building I've ever seen or built in my life. The sides of the windows, I think, are out of proportion. Those are the things that I object to. And we haven't even talked about the siding because we have a new guideline on sides we're working on.
But currently, we're operating under the guidelines that we have. So do you understand what
I understand what you're saying.
we need something that has meat and potatoes to it.
Well, we don't
that's
have
supported in
anything.
Well, but.
And you know what,
well,
why
let's
are
look
we
at the guidelines.
continuing to be around if we don't have guidelines that we can use? Why aren't we setting some standards that we use? Instead of everybody who comes before us, we just go, well, we can't really do this and we can't really do that.
Well, but we are, aren't we?
No, we're not really doing anything. This has double windows. I have double windows.
Yeah, but again, these are modern buildings.
I don't know.
Well,
You know, they're new buildings, but they're exactly what he's building. I kind of like to see.
So if we look at the design guidelines, the guidelines are let's just look at that. So we got building site. We sort of talked about the building site, nothing that we were going to mass, none of us have any real issues with the size of the building, or is the length of the building an issue? Okay. So mass and scale, we're pretty good there. Height and width, not really a problem with height.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, I'm on 33 of mine, but I'm not sure if that, I don't have the.
Yes. Okay.
Second.
All right, next one.
So height and width, I don't think we really have any any issues there. Foundation, we want some clarification of what the foundation should be. I think we could easily get through that. Roof, we've sort of walked through that. We have an appropriate pitch. We don't have anything in the guidelines that says there should be X number of dormers or there shouldn't be anything along that line. So what I'm trying to do is keep us on a footing that is supported by the guidelines that we have. That's all.
So because it's a new house, then we can't call it a style, right? Any one of these historic styles?
Well,
Not as a literal translation of the historic style.
I mean, the pitch of the roof gives it some design element. The porch gives it some design element. You know,
Would you say then, of all the things that we have, it is the most like that house?
No, but that's a two-story house.
Yeah.
A full two-story, this is not. This is
Okay,
like a
so-
story- This is like a story and a half.
right.
Oh, man, that's kind
Yeah.
I call mine two-story and it's like that. I'm just looking for an idea of a style that we could say it needs to characterize. See nothing here.
So, what I would suggest is, or what I would just want to reemphasize is these people have redesigned their plan to bring something forward after our pre-application meeting that is more appropriate than what it formally was. And this is the design that they've come up with, that they feel meet the guidelines. And just like Carrie stated, if that Peach Street elevation doesn't meet the guidelines in any way, then address that. But you can't design it. I mean, this is their idea is to design it. Your idea is to approve what they've designed and not, or you're, you know, within the purview of the guidelines in the historic district. So like, if a building is a little bit too tall, but it meets the ordinance, you guys can't say, well, we'd rather it be 5 feet shorter, you know? Like that's up to the applicant. They want it a little bit higher, they can have it a little bit higher. They want this as their elevation on Peach Street. It meets the guidelines other than maybe some items that you've already discussed, foundation, windows, etc. But other than that, I mean, there's nothing that you can point to that says that this elevation doesn't necessarily meet the guidelines, I don't think. And you gotta really think about, these people have designed this. They've come in, they own this property, they've designed this. And
Bill,
it's-
how many times did I redesign my house? I think it was 5.
But you're the one redesigning your house.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, you can redesign these houses several times.
No, I understand.
And I'm saying, I'm not making my decision just because I don't want them to have to redesign it.
And your house looks different than
Yeah,
it
it's
did
great, doesn't
when
it?
I finished, because you landscape.
Oh,
We talk about
it's still-
foundations, and we talk about breaking up areas, and we talk about those type of things. That, to me, is something that a customer does after the fact. I'm a general contractor. I don't have a green thumb. I don't try to. I think that those are things that come as the house progresses, as the customer makes the house a home. If you walk in your house today, it's entirely different than when I finished. You've made your house a home, and I think it looks completely better from that aspect now that you have done those things at a later date. And I think if the board gives a little leeway on some things, that I think you're gonna find that people that venture to Cape Charles they're not living in a trailer. They're you know, it's entirely different. Your house is entirely different than it was when I finished it.
In the direction of landscaping the yard space on the Peach Street side of the house, it does offer a fairly flexible, design, if you will, group of possibilities. because
Including no landscaping.
Well, correct.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not no landscaping.
personally think we just stay away from the landscaping.
Well,
Exactly, it's not about money, that's what I'm saying.
Suggesting is that, you know, that
I
can
agree, it does
make
have
a
an
difference
impact.
in the big
I agree.
effect, if the owner is willing to do it.
I know that more than anyone.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to, does the town really have any jurisdiction per se over, let's say, new landscaping designs for, you know, new
Other than
properties?
50% lot coverage, that's it.
Yeah, I don't think there's really that.
There's
50% grass or something.
Yeah, you have to have 50% unpervious surface.
Took it out.
So I'm going to propose we sit for a few minutes on that idea. Ed's had some. Herb has some comments he wanted to make about siding windows. Let's hear those and then return to the subject.
The only window that really, all the windows bother me because I think they're too small.
And that's a design element that I think is in your purview, for sure.
Right, okay. And this window here, on the left elevation, I can't understand the functionality of it. I mean, it doesn't even look like it belongs in the house or structure.
Transom, maybe you call it.
Transom window, so if, do they have a floor plan?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So if you go to the floor plan,
The inside basis for that is, that's the bed wall in a bedroom, so the bed would sit under that higher window. I think that's the
Yeah,
reason
there's-
for that.
there's,
Creating a wall space in the bedroom to accommodate the
But
bed.
it's not ventilated. It's fixed panel.
That's just like,
it's just for like, because it faces due west.
Right.
So
You're
gosh, it
set.
could look a whole lot better if we did a
That's
few
the window
details
that-
on it, but we're not allowed to, so.
That's the only window of that I don't think belongs in the
If
structure.
it there, what you can refer to the guidelines for proportionality of the windows and
These.
proportionality and their relative scale and size and precedent for building for others in the area. That's all I'm getting, is that let's grab on to things that we have.
There
common.
is a precedent for this kind of window.
In a wall like that?
Yeah. I can tell you a house I know. Well, a transom window with no window underneath it.
I understand what it is.
But I'm saying, if,
No.
I don't like this particular window, what if they did a transom window that had divisions in it or made it look more historic? Would that be all right with you?
No,
Oh.
I don't like the horizontal window. I've never seen a horizontal window. It's not a window.
there's a couple of them.
You could,
There's
you
one on
could,
Park Avenue.
Am I fine?
There's
Where?
one on Park Avenue in a brick house.
where?
On Park Avenue, right behind the house on Strawberry Street that's for sale. The house right behind it has a brick with lattice, okay, I can see that, got little gingerbread things inside of it, but it's a transom window.
Can I ask you something?
The-
So, the board, when I read this document, the guidelines, I read it front to back. Well, I know it as well as they did. Everything that's described to me here in these guidelines, even when they talk about window and door placement, only talks about the front facade. It doesn't talk about the side, what's visible from here. It only talks about the front facade. How is it determined that a front of the house can be completely,
Well, I think that it's like the visibility of the visibility of the facade. So like Peach Street, like this facade here is it's basically like a front facade, but it's on the side, the corner lot. You kind of have two front facades essentially. The interior one, not so much, but there's still, I still think that they have purview over it because you can see it pretty easily from the road.
Put that window on the back gable of the building and where it can't be seen, you don't have a public alley. It's completely out of our purview.
The other question I had was the sills, the thickness of the sills.
There aren't any.
No sills?
Right.
None shown.
They're picture frame. We had this conversation earlier about this type of building. Your trim, exterior trim is a picture frame trim, right? There's no protruding sill.
on the exterior?
Yeah.
No, there's no.
So there is no sill. Right.
I thought we discussed that. What?
Go ahead.
No, I mean, we had a discussion that to keep some picturesque look at a building, a house, no matter what, new house, old house, whatever, if you're gonna do replacement windows, you have to have a sill with a minimum of 2 inches of thickness.
And is that line in the guidelines?
There's nothing specific about those dimensions in the guidelines. The guidelines about doors and windows are to use the historic examples in town as guidance
Reference.
and reference.
Right.
So picture framed exterior trim doesn't exist on those historic buildings. So there's usually not a continuous band of trim. There's usually a protruding sill and then trim that goes 3 sides and lands on that trim, lands on that sill. So that's what we're talking about. Again, trying to keep some sort of reference to the early designs of windows in the buildings.
And the building technique.
Yeah.
Well, it's not in the guidelines.
It is in the guidelines, it's just not, doesn't say
Specific.
2 inches, it doesn't say protruding sill, it says utilize, well, let's read the exact thing, so. Construct new windows and doors of wood or metal to match the style of building.
Page.
I'm sorry, I'm on page 42. Number 6. Construct new windows and doors of wood or metal and match the style of building. On storefronts, use painted wood or steel doors with large areas of glass, extruded aluminum frames. We're not talking about that. Number 7 is about storm windows. Number 8 is about shutters. Number 9, respect the ratio of walls to openings, windows and doors, evident on adjacent historic facades. Generally, historic buildings have more wall area than window area. Place windows and doors on the facades of new buildings in a rhythm or pattern that relates to the way that openings are placed on historic buildings. Use proportions, horizontal and vertical, that are similar to or compatible with proportions of windows and doors on surrounding historic facades. So that's where we're going with that. So if you don't respect the design of the trim, and it doesn't really sort of support, enhance, or respect the historic nature of the district.
Wait, what? Where's that? You just said something about, which one of this says something about trim?
There isn't anything there that specifically calls out trim.
On page 39, at the left side, there's a drawing that labels each of the basic components for the window. That includes a sill, a frame, and a decorative cap, but that's optional. And the muntins.
No. This doesn't say anything about optional. It says decorative cap. So everyone has to have a decorative cap.
No,
Where does it say optional?
no, it does not say optional.
And it doesn't say optional for sill either. So if the sill is mandatory, then the decorative cap must be mandatory, right?
That'd be great.
So you're reading, I mean, we're taking poetic license with this, or then we need to take poetic license with it. But what I'm saying is, if it's optional, then they're both optional.
No, I think that's a valid point, yes. This is what the guidelines require. That's what it shows you it requires.
I think there's a lot of conflicting information in your document because a lot of this stuff pertains to renovation. It doesn't pertain to new construction.
Well, no, under number 1 it does, on the same page 39.
Well, it says retain original windows and doors.
For new construction, use window and door styles that relate to those found in the district. These styles are described below. Window styles vary by stage design, but elements such as sills, lintels, decorative caps, and shutters should also be respected.
So that doesn't mean that every single one of those elements elements, but universally, when you look in the district, all windows in historic buildings have sills. Not all of them have caps or headers, but they all have sills. So, and they don't have picture frame trim. So that, it seems, and maybe I'm incorrect, but that would seem like a relatively easy thing to do to bring about, a pretty significant change in the appearance of the building. Tell us if that's not the case.
I mean, one minute we're talking about adding trim around windows to add character, which is not a problem. So a sill wouldn't be a problem either. I mean, if that makes that big of a difference to the board, then absolutely, that's not a
I
problem.
think it helps that.
It characterizes the age of the structure.
I don't disagree with that.
And it gives you a larger horizontal line that you would get a shadow from the sun.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm not against the windows the way you have them. It's just that I really believe in my heart, I live in an old
Except for one
house
of
built in 1894. Those shades from the sun give your house dimension,
I don't disagree.
And to me, it's important, I mean, that's just one pet peeve I have, is that we discussed this, and I rode around town, I walked around town, and looked at the sills, and all the older houses have sills. And to watch the sunlight go back and forth, sunset, sunrise, you see this dimension of a shape, of a shadow.
Yeah.
And I really think it adds to character of the house. I really do. And it's not that, I know you could do it,
Yeah. If that would make that big of a difference to the left and right elevation in the front.
I think it's not so much, to me, it's not so much about the elevation, it's again about the guidelines are asking you to respect the windows, the original character of the windows. So it's just one of the elements that we're looking at, that we want the windows to reflect what the guidelines have to say, that's all. So, further comments? Siding? I'll dive into that. So what is our siding? What's your siding?
It's a 5-inch vinyl. A double 5-inch vinyl clapboard. It's manufactured by Certainty.
Okay.
What's the thickness?
.401.
We need .4.
Is that, that's like the medium grade?
Yes.
What was that again? I'm sorry.
It's a .401.
Thank you.
Am I right?
I think .42.
.42.
Oh, that's.
I'm not, Ed, would you?
I think that's medium grade, is that the?
Herb, is that what we are?
No,
proposing?
we wanted to point over to 6.
We're going
I'm
to
just-
6.
I just wanted this to
We
compare.
had from 04, and then we had 42, and then we had 46, which was really a big difference, because everybody could touch it. Yeah, right.
This is a double 4, but it's going to be a double 5, because this gives you a little bit more of a board appearance. It shows in the Oxford blue.
Anybody else want? Corners
That does have.
Color match.
Surface.
with the corners?
Color match of, they're 4-inch. on that.
Is that a true fold?
From how you measure it, yeah, from corner to edge, yeah, full 4-inch. 4-inch, yep.
As much on this or this.
I think it's the one on the right, but it's a 5-inch exposure.
It's a 5-inch.
It's a little bit wider interior.
And the pattern on it?
Like this,
The wood
but just,
look?
oh, the surface pattern is smooth or grained like this?
It's a wood grain texture.
Is that available as smoother?
Not to my knowledge, it's not available.
Did they make any vinyl in a smooth texture?
They do.
Do
They make a a 7-inch that you'd be surprised, but it's only available in white.
Any color you want, as long as
It's
it's.
made by Roll Building Products.
That was Henry Ford's mom.
Anything you want to know about vinyl siding, I can tell you.
His mom was, you can have a car in any color you want, as long as it's black.
The length of your siding,
12-foot nights.
okay, is it available in 20?
They make them a 16. They make, the next step up from that is a .46.
That's
they-
20.
That they make them a
20, right,
They call it XL. is what they-
right.
Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of seams on those west and east
Right.
elevations.
That's why I asked if it was available in 20.
They do make the 4.6, which is the monogram. This is the main street. They make the monogram in a 20.
Right.
XL.
And how about the trim around the doors?
Trim around the doors is 3-inch brick mold, full PVC. Exact.
Is there any reason why you couldn't go with the same trim around the doors as you do on the windows in terms of width and size?
A 5-inch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. It would just be in addition to, because it's a pre-hung door, we would do it in addition to that, so you would have the 3-inch plus the 5. And if you make a 3.5-inch, if we could add to it so it appears.
But it's not flat, right? It's a standard brick mold pattern.
What's that?
Whatever.
The additional trim is flat.
Yeah, but the other stuff is, what comes on the door
Brick mold is-
as a pre-hung unit is a standard brick mold pattern.
This is the 5-inch that goes, and the reason this nailing plane, this would go up against the surface that you're putting in, and this would, your siding would hide in behind, you're cutting the sides.
That's
hide
the
behind
J on
this.
it, right?
One condition that we haven't yet touched on, a question about, is the shape of the front porch roof. You have a shallow pitched shed type roof shape facing the street.
Yep.
But it appears from the front elevation drawings that each of the ends is a steeper sort of mansard-like shape, as opposed to a more typical hip roof form.
If you look at the,
As I look at the front elevation,
if you look at the left elevation, it depicts the hip ends instead of a shade. So it's an identical pitch. It's a 3-pitch on the,
the 312 does apply to the end as well?
yes. So that's why they show it on the side as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, except the 312 looks like it's for the main surface here, whereas this is drawn a much steeper angle on each end.
It would-
As if it's a steeper pitch, that's
It's
what
going to be proposed to be a 3 to match the
it
3.
would be. So it's really a true hip,
Yes.
three-sided hip. Okay.
I think that drawing does make it look like that. doesn't it?
Okay, thanks for that.
I think the reason for that is because the depth of the porch, when you look at the depth of the porch, if the porch were 10 feet in depth, you would probably have a little bit more reveal there to work with.
It could be, although again, in a flat elevation drawing, you would expect each end to be drawn at the 312 pitch,
Yes.
just to visually present it as a hip roof.
We plan on matching the main pitch of the roof.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions?
Were the steps gonna be wood? Were they gonna be covered in anything?
The risers are exact.
Tread,
Huh?
and the tread
The treads are wood.
wood.
The decking is wood.
Do you plan to stain the decking of the?
I think the customer wants to stain it, they need the time, it needs
Needs
time
to
to dry, so I think their plan is to stain it after the fact.
You talking about the front porch?
Yes, sir.
So you're gonna use a 5/4 round edge decking
5/4 round edge decking.
and run it parallel to the house.
Yes.
Again,
You're talking about the
Parallel.
tread, you're talking about the stair tread.
well, I mean, I'm asking what his plan is,
Oh.
which is, I assume that's what it was. Again, I think the guidelines would refer you back to the look of porches having that run at right angles to the wall of the building, as we discussed earlier, so that you have pitched away from the building and either a tongue-and-groove product or non-east edge decking.
We still actually do put a pitch on it, yes, we're gonna run it parallel to the nosing of the treads.
Right. Should be the other way. So if that's your gable wall of front of the house, the porch decking should run this direction, not this way. And it should be a tongue and groove product, not a east edge decking material, because we don't see that in any of the porches in town. Any other comments?
No, how?
I'll make a call for motions.
All right.
Do you have all the changes or all the differences?
That would have to go in a motion.
No, I mean, do we have them written down?
I've made several notes about the changes, but I mean, if you don't put it in a motion, it just becomes part of the minutes.
Okay,
If
but I don't
he
have-
makes a motion and forgets something, will you mention it?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion. Would you mention that the request of the additional items that we requested? Like the sill.
We'll have to list every one.
The window sill.
That's what I'm saying. You're gonna end up with a motion that's 2 paragraphs long if you're gonna mention every one of these. We've been down that road before.
Okay, so how do we,
Well, so the other option is to defer that allows the applicant to return and respond to the collection of things that
That
have
we've said.
discussed here.
Bill,
okay,
when were you planning
Yeah,
on
that's
starting
fine.
your house?
Right.
What's that,
When were you planning on starting your house?
tomorrow?
The
I'm not-
foundation is tomorrow, but when will the rest of it appear?
This is too much background, but I'll tell you that their project was we were supposed to deliver the house in September, so we're 6 months past that now. So from my perspective, I already had to go back in my field playbook and move 3 other customers now ahead of this customer. So things move very quickly in my business, you know.
Is this house built
What
in
we talk about
Pennsylvania?
tonight, my guys would have done last week, so, I mean, but to answer your question directly, I mean, they'd like to start as soon as physically possible. I mean, they have sold their house in Fredericksburg, they've closed on it, they have the money in escrow, and we are leery on closing the loan because as things change here tonight, that could change the appraisal based on the bank appraisal. So they don't want to have to they've already ordered one bank appraisal, they don't want to have to go order another one. So they're sitting there, you know, they're kind of waiting now for this to happen tonight. So I'd ask the board to vote on it, yes or no. That's what I would ask.
I think we have 2 options. You can, to me, Tracy, that correct me, we can defer, or we can vote yes or no. If we, I guess the third option would be to offer conditional approval. I think it's just impractical with the number of things that we've talked about to list a conditional approval with all of these items.
Would it be any help at all if you were able to put the foundation in and we still defer it till the next meeting?
We can't get a
Of
regularized consent plan.
course, you can't get
Well,
someone without a
they
plan.
have a terrible responsibility if they don't agree with, and we don't approve it the next time. You know, that really puts,
Okay.
I would recommend that somebody make a motion to defer. I don't know if I can do that, but I think that is but I can't make.
Do we have any say in this? We want you to vote.
Yeah, I would
Just-
say
you need to
if
cast
you
a
don't
vote.
agree with your deferral, then you deny it. If you're suggesting these things and they're just gonna come back with the same exact application, then that's not fair to them, y'all should just deny it.
All right, I'll make a motion to defer.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion to defer. We have a second. Any discussion?
I thought,
There,
I thought, wait, hold on, we thought we just talked about that.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
can't defer.
one moment. Maybe I misunderstood that. Please enlighten us.
So you're deferring on the idea that they're agreeing to come back with a new set of plans. If they are not agreeing to come back with a new set of plans, which is what it sounds like they're leaning towards, then you should deny it. Because you're just gonna delay them a month to deny the exact same set of plans that they're proposing.
but that's really not true, because the suggestions that we've talked about are not that dramatic. We haven't changed the roof pitch. I mean, everything looks good except for sills we've changed, which you agree is not a big deal, right?
I don't
Excuse me,
disagree with
what
that.
he's saying is what the board is supposed to be doing is approving or denying what is in front of them. These are a lot of changes in your suggestions. So even if you defer it, they don't have to do it. So if you're not going to approve what was presented to you, it needs to be denied.
Well, could we have a conditional?
No.
It's not in conditions.
Yes, not if it's, and there's,
Okay.
do you understand what I'm saying? Is
Yeah,
that
I
they
do.
don't have to do
So
these
here's
suggestions.
a question that needs to go into the minutes. So you're unwilling to make any of the changes that we've suggested?
What are the changes? The changes are additional sills, then the answer is yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
If you're asking for additional 5-inch trim on Peach Street, we've already agreed that we're gonna do that as part of our application.
I think
And you
that
said that was already on the
It's
front.
already on the front. And if you're asking us if the, left side window elevation that depicts the wrong GVG is gonna be corrected, yes, we had already planned on that, that was a misprint. Matter of fact, that was depicted in my email. The long window that is in the master bedroom, we're not changing that, because the master bedroom headboards, I mean,
Yeah, there's no place else to
there's
put
no
it.
place else to put it. So it's either take the window out altogether, which I'm sure the customer will be open for that, which makes a big flaw there, or leave the window there.
Well, I think it's the style of the window. You know, we're just gonna go around and around the fence about this. I think, they're not willing to make the changes that we want.
Well, I am ready to say no.
I haven't
So
said
you're
that.
not gonna change that window?
Well, that was the first thing that was the last thing that we were arbitrating, was that window,
The long skinny window.
the long skinny window.
And what do you think they said?
Well, that's the last thing that we mentioned, that's the only thing we're talking about right now is the long skinny window.
That's the only thing that I'm saying that we're not gonna change,
Well, we
because
haven't talked about the true divided light or not in the windows either. Just,
We haven't even looked at the plan, accessory dwelling unit.
I think the only thing that we're opposed to is the one window that's in the master bedroom.
The long skinny window
The
on
transom
the
window.
left, on
It's
the left
either,
view.
yeah, from our point, the window serves a function from the interior. It gives the customer
Natural light, that's the
no
only thing.
place other to put their headboard. I mean, if they put a window there, they're gonna slam the
hundreds of
window.
houses have beds.
There are other windows there that you could put there that look better than, but I don't want to design and
Yeah,
build.
let's,
one.
so let's continue with this. So the porch flooring,
I don't think you'd be opposed to running perpendicular, and as long as like a picture
and
frame.
it's a T&G product.
But they make a composite TNG.
Yeah, they do.
They make a composite TNG. Or is this only?
So, so we're getting into, maybe you guys need to write this down and then deny the thing. Because I've got money too. I mean, I can't just keep adding things on and I don't know what things cost. I don't know if something costs $1,000 or $10,000.
Well, here's where we're going. If you're willing to make changes that we're talking about, then we'll defer and give you a chance to make those changes. If you're not willing, then we'll make a vote on.
The pressure treated TNG is the same price as the 5 core.
Right.
They do make, I'm just telling you, they do make a composite TNG. They wouldn't know the difference after we install it, so, I mean, it really wouldn't have any basis of ruling on that.
No, we're not
As long as
opposed to the composite.
As long as it looked the same.
So far, I haven't heard you say no to anything,
Except this one window,
except the long skinny window on the
which
right.
we could have discussions about give and take on other things.
What are the dimensions on that window?
I think it's 5 or 6 foot,
It's, I think it's 6
Long by
foot,
how tall?
1 foot.
but it doesn't open.
I don't even care about that. There's a lot of windows like this. I think it'd be look a lot better if it was wider, but since we're not talking about
It's a
looks.
6, it's a 601, so it's 6 foot,
And it's 1 foot tall?
1 foot tall.
Wow.
The reason for the window being 1 foot tall is
Yeah.
because if you have a headboard that is yay tall, you're gonna want some space
Uh-huh.
between that and your
This
window.
just, that
and
kind
your-
of window just doesn't fit in the architecture, really.
So if we
You put
remove,
transom over
we
windows and
remove-
doors,
we
not in
remove
the middle of the wall.
Or give us some other design there, something.
how about an operative, like a 2.0?
It's
So
the
instead of 1 foot, 2 foot.
Why can't you put one on either side of the bed? You have,
Wall's not that long.
Yeah, the wall's not that long.
Yeah.
well, how big is your bedroom wall? What's the dimension? It's gotta be 12 feet at minimum.
14,
Very
14 and 11.
Looks like all this.
14.
You need 3, I'll get into structural things here. So from the corner,
It's 14 by 14.
so from the corner of the front room, we need roughly about 2.5 feet there for a brace wall. So that's a continuous jack stud because of the gable end wall. So that takes out 2 foot, so now I'm down to about 10 foot, I'm down to about 10 foot usable space by the time I trim everything out. If you, a king size bed is 5 foot, 6 foot. So I'm down to about 4 feet now, so I'm down to 1, I could put 1 window, so somebody's gonna get gypped on one side of the bed or the other. We could do a 2 over top of it.
So the question would be, if you wanted, we could vote on deferring, if you wanted to go back and make these changes and redesign that window in some fashion. You've heard what our concern is, it's proportionality. Come up with something else. Put a row of smaller windows at the top, something that doesn't have this long, skinny, narrow slit to me. And I think we have a motion to defer based on that, if you're willing to do those.
Are there any other conditions?
Are the railings,
Vinyl.
Do we have specs on the railing? I didn't notice. Let's see them.
I ain't got paper if I work with it's written on, so we'll bring it. You
That's
accept it?
almost short rail.
We got small dogs.
So it has
We don't have to get it.
aluminum core, so.
you got a leg,
It has aluminum core, so it's none of this wiggly wobbly, go to Home Depot, buy it railing.
it's just got that shiny finish
It's
on it.
just plastic.
It's maintenance free, that's what we sell.
Yeah,
So-
that's not conducive to historic areas, really.
This is a new home. I'm
I
not
don't know.
gonna complain about it.
I don't have a problem, I just don't like shiny.
Come on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with
To
it.
me, as far as the general district appearances are concerned, the top rail is a reasonable detail. We have square balustrades.
I agree.
We have the square rectangular bottom rail. I mean, the general design.
My only problem is is it looks like shiny.
Yeah.
So,
It's sort of the same.
so you've heard 1, 2, 3 people, I can't vote, so you've heard it on your rail right there.
However, if you had everything in wood and you put on 2 coats of gloss paint, finish it, would that not also have a sheen or
Yeah.
shine?
They can do that.
Which is an option,
Yeah, roll outside,
so
gloss white.
I really can't say I have an issue with that particular.
No, I'm just saying, that's my own opinion, okay? I put my opinion out there, but I'm gonna vote that way, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Grills and and windows, that's the other topic that we've kind of lost around.
Yeah.
And just so you guys understand, I went to go back to my warehouse to find one, and I was chosen between walking the dog and coming and getting things.
You chose to walk the
I
dog.
chose to walk
Good
the
move.
dog, because I want my dog's old. So, but
We all need priorities,
so the GBG that we use as a standard in all of our houses here has a detail on it, so it's not a flat detail. It does have a raised portion on it. It just happens to be between the glass. And it's not traditional, traditionally what you see, what I've seen approved from the board here, and what people are putting in is a 5/8. We use a 1 inch, so it is a little wider. It's not, you know, it's
It's just that the
traditionally-
guidelines specifically say that there should be a grill visible on the outside.
And I think, and I understand what the guidelines say. I just think that there needs to be a little give and take on that.
Is there any option for, I mean, are you open to a window with grills on the exterior?
I have offerings, but it's up to the customer. We do, they only have, there's only a single bar, so, I mean, it's only one, it would only be one bar. And we do have the option to do a semi-divided light, which is on the exterior of the window.
I want to agree with that, so I know how much it costs. I want to agree with that concession, so I know how much it costs.
So if you're willing to look at those things, we can take a vote on its deferral. So we have a motion, we've had comment, we've had second.
Yeah, I made the motion.
Yeah, and the third,
Yeah.
I'm just worried that I'm worried that we're gonna come back with what our idea of what you just said, and you guys are gonna defer it again or deny it again. I mean,
I
if you give me 3 specific things that I need to fix and what I need to do to fix them, that's one thing, but telling me to come back with another idea of what it's gonna look like, you know, like the transom window.
I think that's the only sort of vague thing we've talked about. We're trying to give you as much flexibility there as possible. Something that's not a long, narrow slit of a window.
but I understand, he does want to feel like we've approved everything except for this. And those are the only things we're going to review when he comes back.
7 hours. I mean, this is a 7-hour round trip for us. Every time we come down. We live in Fredericksburg.
Yeah, we'd rather.
So it's 2 days off of work, it's 7 hours. And it's frustrating to come down and walk away with a bunch of, oh, traffic's here.
Would you guys need to see
And I think at our
You
meeting,
need to see
I pointed
another.
out that this window on the original.
Well, I know, but it was on the other side of the house, and your point,
But
you
I-
made it on the other side of the house,
size
it
of
was
the
on Peach
window
Street.
does not fit in anything.
I'm sorry, what?
Would you need to see another drawing of that elevation, or would you, if we said we would put 230 windows that look identical to the windows that face Peach Street, just like you see in the living rooms, would you be?
I feel like I can, if you put conditions, bullet points, I can approve it. If you came in with a plan tomorrow, I could approve it the way that you guys are intended. I have confidence in myself to do that. I understand that the deputy clerk might not agree, but I feel as a person who's approving the elevations that I would be able to do that.
It's just that it's really hard with
Take these 2 windows,
conditions. I mean, this is,
pick them up,
For the
we're
minutes,
changing the
put them
whole.
right here in this, I mean,
We defer to
wrong outside and inside.
You're going to do away with the
You took this,
Yeah, that's
you
what I'm
you have confidence that you can
took
say
this,
Yes.
and
I mean,
just
what
put
if-
it on the other side,
Yeah.
just right where
instructions.
it is.
I mean, if you guys could, if the motion is clear,
One window there, one window there.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time you said you.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is good.
Well, we're willing to make it.
He's going to change
Wait,
that.
What do we
I'll
just?
take a blank wall.
That's fine. That's-
So what I'm saying is take 2 windows of this same style,
Just like that.
those same style windows,
yeah.
and put one left, one right of it,
Yeah.
one left, one right of it.
But then how much does that leave us?
If they do that.
But roughly it'll leave you about 6 feet.
No one.
But I don't know.
Take the one out, that's okay.
This is, I mean, just deny it, so we can get this over with, so we can see the city council. Just deny it. I'm tired of it. This is everything, it's like, that's a lot of things to go with. Now, sir, we've been looking at these plans for months, and we kicked them around so many times.
You're that close to getting what you want. That close. Sure.
That's not what I want. This is what I want. That's why I picked it out. I mean, that's the problem. If we're just deny it. Get it over with. You guys keep, I mean, it's one thing after another. Just
But
deny
everybody
it.
on board is trying to help you. That's the way I feel. I mean, do you feel that way?
I'll do what my customer wants me to do,
Right.
but I understand that if you need to make a concession, you make a concession. And if you guys,
So you want to delay this just over one window? You want to go to town council and go that route? You want to get, and you want to go to appeal?
We'll take it out. Take it out
I
altogether.
mean, that's what, I mean, we're that close.
will you approve it if the windows are removed?
I have no problem with that.
Nobody does. I mean, we already have a motion on the floor.
Well, you want that motion, or not vote for that motion, but a new one.
So options again are to vote on Herb's motion, or, well, we have to vote on Herb's motion. So we vote on Herb's motion.
You don't have to.
No, we can have a replacement.
Because we had a
You
second.
can just,
Well,
Okay.
so how it would work is someone else would make a motion.
Okay, all right, okay. So we can have a second motion that gives a conditional approval listing the specifics of the conditions and allows Zach to enforce the validity of those, or not the validity, the specifics of those conditions.
Right.
Before we do that, are we also voting on the accessory dwelling unit?
The what?
The accessory
There's a
dwelling unit.
garage, accessory
And
dwelling.
almost, if they don't need to start that, I'd almost like to break this in half so that they can get started.
The way we amend it.
Well, it has to be part of the plans, because it has to be approved, it's part of the mortgage.
Oh, man.
So the accessory dwelling is part of the mortgage, so it's gotta be part of the plan. It's gotta be part of your approval.
Well, all right. Anybody have any problem with the overall design of the accessory dwelling?
No, just the wider trim for the windows.
Yeah, so
I
we
mean, I have
require
the same
same-
problem. The left elevation I like, and the right elevation that is facing Peach Street is nothing.
It's a garage.
I know, but it's
A lot
on
of
Peach
garages.
Street.
There's a lot of garages down
So
there.
the sills on those windows
Same thing.
and the 5-inch wire trim.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Let me ask you a question.
Now, hold on, let me ask you a question. It's just, is it the entire 4-sided elevation? We talked about on the house that the rear, you said it didn't matter on the rear,
You can do,
Wait a minute.
yeah.
but on the
Three sides.
sides.
Matter.
So the garage would be the front opposing side,
Just not the left.
the right, not the left or the rear. The rear doesn't have anything on it, so that
So
doesn't
the rear
apply.
would-
All right, the right have one window on the second floor.
Right,
2 windows on the front.
right,
They would have to have sills and trim.
right.
Right.
Not a problem.
I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I'm asking you is, on the second floor of the garage, is it gonna be occupied? And if it is ever gonna be occupied, do you have,
Oh, sorry. Never, keep going.
what?
No, keep going.
The egress window.
It's a 3.0 window, so a 3.0 meets a egress,
Okay.
ingress, egress.
That's not in there.
So I wanna,
Yeah. Doesn't
That's a code issue.
well, sometimes it is.
Okay, so I'm gonna read the conditions before anybody proposes.
Yep.
So the conditions would be to add the 5-inch trim on all windows and doors with sills on the windows except for the rear elevation of the house and the rear elevation of the garage. There would be true divided light or an applied grill work to the exterior of the windows. The long windows, exterior glass, I'm sorry. The long windows, or the long window is eliminated. The foundation detail would be a parched block. The porch flooring would be a tongue and groove product running at right angles to the wall of the house. Did I miss anything?
The screening system on the porch will be
Oh, the screening.
behind the railing.
Right.
The screening system on the porch would be behind the railing.
It's just a matter of
And the
the
window
railing
the,
needs protection.
in the rear.
The long window.
For us humans, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't-
So in my mind,
I mean, it's a screening system, so I mean.
what
it's
they would
it's
change
sustainable,
would be
but-
so minimal that like, it doesn't require another one.
I'm all, if they would agree on for it.
So let me ask you on the screen, could, I mean, this might not make much sense from a building perspective, but can the railing be on the, what we see from the front elevation? Could the railing be where you're asking for it, but on the left and rear elevation be inside if they wanted it that way? I don't know.
How's the left, how's the left elevation, where would you see that from?
I don't think you see it.
You see that?
I didn't go back
It
there.
would, but it's toward the back of the house.
You don't really see it well.
I think the guidelines refer to the porch's front elevation. If you wanted to do that, what does anybody feel?
How would that even work?
Yeah, because you'd have to go around.
Don't the rails have to
No,
attach?
he's talking about
Oh,
this
this
system.
Yeah, if you think- yeah, I mean,
There's a porch here, I think, and then there's the other.
These sections, the railing and the post.
Oh, that's the same.
Oh, this is what he's talking about, it's the same thing.
On the side and the back.
This is
It's one porch, here it's the side, it shows on
Oh,
Madison,
yeah.
to have a rail in front, and the other two sides have a rail in the back.
so we would change the
That's how they
screen.
do that.
I'm trying to get as much.
But if he can do it, that's his-
Decide that you want to put
Right.
how it is, other elevation,
Yeah.
you want it on the inside.
So we would agree that you would put the screen on, behind the posts and the railing, only on the front facade.
If they wanted to, I mean, if they
Yeah,
decide
yeah,
to move it
yeah.
to the outside.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'm just trying to have a little leeway if I need a little leeway. If I don't need the leeway,
So when you do that, just do one, and then read it, two, and then read it, so that it's broken up.
Okay.
Did they agree to put another window on the, that one elevation? On the,
We did not make that a condition.
I was supposed to.
On Peach Street?
Yeah, Peach Street.
Another window, no, you just
So
said
that
trim.
was discussed, but I don't think,
I know we talked about it, but I don't know.
Yes.
The right elevation.
I don't,
you ask for a 5-inch trim in the sills.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if somebody wants to make a motion list saying that it includes the conditions, can I read the conditions?
Just maybe hand here.
Yeah, I've got like
No?
Texas notes here.
Okay, I make a motion with the conditions.
You have to read them all.
Then we do
Yes,
them.
ma'am.
But all the windows have to have exterior.
Just the 3 elevations.
No, go ahead. Can you read it, please?
And it's just
It's
one.
just one little stick.
I'm just asking,
Yeah, yeah.
if it's all windows or?
I mean, that's what you have
Just
now.
one stick.
That's what you have now, and you can take a one.
Right, but if we,
You have
as we,
interior.
it's gonna be on the inside of between two windows, but now it's gonna be just an outside stick.
I'm going to read the conditions.
Well, that's
So
what
Ed's gonna
Ed,
make the
as
motion.
opposed to Ed.
This is a.
The other,
The other Ed.
This is
Yeah.
a replacement motion. I move that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for 333 Madison Avenue with the following conditions.
correct.
Number one, that window trim will be 5 inches with a sill detail.
And door.
Trim on windows and doors will be 5 inches with a sill detail on the windows. Sorry, Tracy.
Except for rear elevation.
Sill detail, is that what you want to put in here?
Right.
casings, is another word, will be 5 inches wide. With a sill detail at the windows. Item 2, condition item 2, the horizontal window on the left elevation in the master bedroom will be eliminated. Condition 3, the exposed foundation walls will receive a parged finish. Condition item 4, windows sash will, no, back up a minute. The top window sash will include an exterior grille or muntin detail on the glass. Are you ready, Tracy? Okay.
Yeah.
Condition item 5. The porch flooring will be a tongue and groove detail perpendicular to the front wall of the house.
On the front porch.
The front porch.
Front porch.
Yeah, the front porch flooring will be tongue and groove perpendicular to the wall. And condition item 6, the screening system on the west porch will be behind both the porch railing and the posts on the front elevation only.
Or minimal, at least.
Yeah, at least on the front elevation only.
That gives you flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So does that cover it?
And did that cover the accessory dwelling unit too?
Yes.
Okay.
You should say that same conditions apply to.
All right, then, condition item, we're up to 7.
Yeah.
All right, condition item 7, the previous conditions for the house will be included on the accessory dwelling, at the accessory dwelling. Does that seem to cover?
Do I have a second? I'll second.
The real end.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you so much for working with us.
See, it wasn't paperwork.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you, guys. Please.
Give me my bill.
So, last item on the agenda, our elections.
If it takes you less than 30
Email me this so that I can contact them. I'll make sure that I get it done right.
Let's just get that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I don't know how this works. I'm assuming we ask if there anybody wants to put forward a candidate or.
Yes, it's like a motion.
All right, so we're looking for motions for a candidate for president.
And that,
Is that motion, it's not president?
I'm not going to carry
For
the,
president, that's what.
I'm not going to carry.
Carrie is
For
in,
Chairman.
Carrie is involved.
Carry the what? Carry the what?
It's in thoughts.
Do we have any
He's
other?
thinking. This is what.
second it. No, that wasn't the question. I said, are there any other motions?
What about co-chair?
Well, we haven't voted on the chair.
We do, oh, you have to do them separately? Oh, okay, excuse me. All right. So we have a motion.
We have a second.
nominating him.
Discussion, can I discuss a couple of things?
Sure,
Sure.
go right ahead.
I travel a lot,
Mhm.
and I'm not necessarily as accessible during the week and during the day as I would like to be. That's a concern of mine. It would, if we had a chair who was more, a vice chair who was more accessible, I'd be more amenable to that.
Well, we can vote for the vice chair first.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
my concern.
I know, but, okay, never mind.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Do we have a motion for a vice chair?
I move we nominate Diane.
And I will absolutely not do it.
All right,
Next,
then I move we nominate Carol.
Ed Ellis.
Is that funny?
It's funny because you say no, we'll just get over.
I didn't say no. I can help.
So we have a motion on the table.
Yep.
I second.
We have a second.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Do we have a motion to,
Sorry.
we have
I'll
a
make a motion
motion
to adjourn.
I'll
to,
second.
motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.